Yes, it is.
Yeah,
It's recording.
Great stuff. So I'm just going to flick back on the screen so we've got it for the recording. Here are our objectives for today, and I've said that the common challenges we're going to do, not today, but as part of a video which I will send to you. So that's my plan. Then we talk a little bit about our experiences and a debrief, which we did in private, so that we can come to supporting mums with their infant feeding without thinking about our journey, but really focusing on them and what they need, rather than trying to make people do it in the same way that we do it or have done it. So when we look at infant feeding, we can think about our own experiences if we've had them or people we've known, but also about how breastfeeding is or isn't in the media. If you think about emojis, until very recently, the only emoji available for infant feeding was of a formula bottle. And it's only quite recently that they've made a breastfeeding emoji. But bottles as a symbol of babies is really prevalent across all forms of media. So that tells something about how we expect people to feed their babies. Healthcare messages, however, are very different. And healthcare messages for many, many years have been very focused on breastfeeding as the only route, which is why I say it can contribute to the kind of mummy wars of what people are expecting versus what they're being told, and the absolutely horrible phrases, breast is best and fed is best. Does anyone have any idea about why I might have a problem with both of those phrases in terms of thinking about how they do or don't support women? Breast is best and fed is best. You might have heard of one or both of them.
I've heard breast is best. I mean, it just paints a poor picture for the women that haven't been successful, and if they're obviously going through the grief of that, then it's promoting that in a way where it's like there is no other option.
Yeah. It's saying that if you say something like that, it's saying that you failed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And who wouldn't want to give their baby the best? So we might well talk about breastfeeding being the physiological norm. That means that we're saying breastfeeding is what is expected in terms of what mothers' bodies do and what babies come out of the womb expecting. It's the norm, it's the basis for what we expect. It might not be the parenting choice, but we can talk about it in evidence-based terms as being the expectation for babies and the norm for babies. And we know as professionals from a scientific point of view that milk produced by the mother is produced for that baby, so is going to be nutritionally more targeted at that baby than milk produced commercially, which comes from cow's milk. But putting it in a pejorative way of breast is best gives the idea that there's a not best. And scientifically speaking, that is accurate. If we're talking about comparing formula milk and breast milk, there are absolutely differences, which we will go through today. But that's talking professional to professional. When we're talking to clients, there is a big difference between being evidence-based and saying that breast milk is what baby is expecting because it's tailored exactly to them, and giving a pejorative idea something is best, i.e. you failed if you're not providing it. So there's a real balance there. It's important to give scientifically truthful information, and formula is not equivalent to breast milk, but doing it in the right way with clients means that they're not going to feel personally challenged by what you're saying. Who's heard of the phrase fed is best? No? Oh, you lucky people then. Fed is best is a campaign started by a retired OB-GYN from America. And it's predominantly run by people who have formula fed. And the idea of fed is best is to say that as long as you're feeding your baby, however you're feeding them, breast milk, formula milk, that's all fine. But again, the terminology of fed is best isn't very helpful, because if someone's trying to breastfeed and they're trying super hard, and it's a real tough journey, and someone comes to them and says, well, just feed the baby formula, fed is best. Does that support the woman in the choices that she's making? Or does it actually negate what she's trying to do, which is give her baby the physiological norm, which can be bloody hard work sometimes. So again, the idea of fed is best can be used in a pejorative way to say, we're not actually going to take account of your struggles with breastfeeding. We're just going to say, feed the baby, it's all okay. And the idea of fed is best is an odd one, because fed is kind of the basis here. Not feeding your baby is fundamentally not an option, is it? So fed isn't best. Fed is the absolute baseline that you have to do as a parent. And when we talk about breastfeeding support, the first rule of breastfeeding support is feed the baby. You know, whatever needs to get into that baby needs to have food. But that's the baseline. It's not the aim to feed the baby. That's, you know, the lowest level of thing we can do. And in terms of what the baby's needs are, meeting the baby's needs, breast milk will meet the baby's needs better than formula milk will. But the baby isn't the only one in this equation. The mother is in this equation as well, which is why it's important not to come with a pejorative, this is the only way or this is the best way when you're talking to your clients. But it's also important to have a background understanding of the differences between breast milk and formula, because unlike what a third of the UK population surveyed a couple of years ago think, they are not scientifically equivalent. But interestingly, a third of people surveyed when Swansea did some research thought they were exactly the same, that breast milk and formula milk were equitable, which isn't the same when you're talking about a baby's nutrition and a baby's gut.
Lost the internet.
Oh, Habib, have you lost us? Okay, so why breastfeed? So, benefits for the infant. Breast milk is made perfectly for an individual baby. I've put on COVID because, you know, I've updated for COVID. And we know that mums who have been exposed to COVID share those antibodies through their breast milk, which is super protective. But we know that breast milk is made for that exact baby, to the extent that if a baby is born prematurely, the milk that comes out at that point will be perfect for a premature baby. If a baby's born at term, the consistency will be different. If a baby is, if a mum, sorry, is exposed to different things in her environment, the breast milk will change according to what is in her environment. If a baby is quite warm in the summer and is thirsty, the breast milk will change in terms of what sort of composition it has, because the baby's thirsty. So the milk is absolutely tailored for that baby. And you might have seen on the internet sometimes pictures of breast milk being different colours, sometimes bluer, sometimes more orange. It can be as a factor of what mum's eating, but often it's as a factor of actually what is in the breast milk at that time. And the breast milk will change if the baby's ill to provide antibodies to help the baby get better. When we talk about the benefits of breastfeeding, it's important to have a difference between the individual and a population level. So we absolutely can't say that this breastfed baby, yeah, very, very healthy looking baby, is not going to get sick because it's breastfed, because that's not how it works. But what we do know is that when we look at all of the babies in the UK, and we look at the statistics, for example, for hospital admissions, there are more hospital admissions for formula-fed babies for things like gastroenteritis, for urinary issues, for inner ear and respiratory issues. There are more hospitalizations and diagnoses of formula-fed babies for allergies, asthma, type 1 diabetes, so forth. It doesn't mean that an individual baby is going to be healthy or unwell. But when we look at all of them, generally, breast milk is the basis, it's the physiological norm, and babies who are formula fed are more prone to a wide range of things. And there are some really simple reasons for some of them that are not to do with actually what's in the breast milk, but how they're feeding. So traditionally, and we'll go through how to formula feed a baby, but traditionally, I move my camera down. There we go. Can you see me? Yes, you can. Mm-hmm. If we're going to feed a baby from a bottle, kind of looks like that. We're going to learn that it shouldn't look like this. but that is traditionally how we would expect to see a baby fed. And when they're like this, the milk washes over the back of their inner ear. This is how babies are made, with little tiny tubes. So the milk washes over that inner ear. If the milk in here is from baby cows, as opposed to here, this is why it's really good to have one, so you're demonstrating but not on you. And the baby's having milk from the breast. Something very different is going over their inner ear. So we think that because the inner ear is so sensitive, that running milk that's from a cow over it is sensitizing the baby to be more likely to have things like inner ear infections. So there are things that we're only just starting to realise about why formula-fed babies are more likely to be at risk of some of these issues. And we'll go over in the next module about how to formula feed a baby, or how to bottle feed a baby to be precise, to lessen those risks. We also know, if we look at the SIDS data, that formula-fed babies are more likely to die of sudden infant death. Again, does that mean every formula-fed baby is going to die? Obviously not. But when we do look at the UK data, formula-fed babies are a higher risk than babies who are breastfed. And again, we think that's because the formula milk made from cow's milk takes longer to digest in the stomach, so it sits there longer. It's more likely to cause the baby to sleep for longer chunks. And it's important to note, when we talk about infant sleep, breastfed babies sleep the same amount overall in 24 hours as formula fed, but they may have more frequent wakings within, but then go back to sleep very quickly. Whereas formula fed babies may have longer chunks of sleep, and actually for young babies that's not thought of as a good thing, because it's the rousing up from sleep that is a protective factor against SIDS. Breastfeeding supports the development of the jaw and teeth, so you may well have heard of tongue tie if you were listening to Carmel Gentle's talk before we met today. She talked about tongue tie, the little bit there, which can be short and fat. When a baby's tongue tied in the womb, so obviously that's happened before they've even come out, the palate of their mouth, the roof of their mouth, often tends to be quite high, because the baby in the womb hasn't been moving their tongue up and down and helping form that palate. Breastfeeding, over the first year or so, supports the development of that and can actually flatten it out, and supports the development of jaws and teeth. And bottles, even if it's breast milk in the bottle, won't do that. But breastfeeding isn't just about those health issues. It also helps regulate heart rate and temperature. And again, that's breastfeeding rather than breast milk. So breast milk in a bottle will not regulate heart rate. But feeding baby here will regulate heart rate and temperature if you're skin to skin, which tells you a lot about how to formula feed a baby, doesn't it? Trying to get as close to this as possible, and skin to skin feeding, not as a maternity nurse, but as a parent, your bottle fed baby can actually help you to have some of these benefits. So there are some benefits for the infant. Any questions on those before we move on? And I could say so much more on this, and I will do, but that will be in a separate breastfeeding course. So if you want 8 hours on boobs, that's going to be offered in a few months' time. So it's going to be sort of skipping over the absolute basics here. So benefits for mum. Women who breastfeed, again, not on an individual level, but on a population level, have lower rates of breast and ovarian and endometrial cancers. So breastfeeding is protective for mother's health. And interestingly, if I breastfed this little girl and she never breastfed or never had children, she would still be at lower risk of those cancers than her sister, whom I formula fed. So those protective benefits are generational. It can support a return to pre-pregnancy weight. It can delay the onset of periods, both of which might be seen as good things. Certainly it's cheaper. Don't have to buy formula, always a good thing. And it's available, like Fiona said, on demand, constantly in the middle of the night, with no preparation, no warming it up, and no washing up, which for me is a real bonus. So, why breastfeed? So most people don't decide to breastfeed because of a list of scientific factors. They don't go, oh, breast milk has oligosaccharides, totally going to breastfeed. Breast milk has the right proteins for my baby, totally going to breastfeed. Isn't how most people make decisions. So I'm going to pop you into pairs and a three. I wonder where the others are. I'm going to have to do some phoning, I think. And one of you is going to share reasons people might decide to breastfeed. And one of you is going to share reasons why people might not decide to or to stop. So the three will split that person B into two roles. Reasons why people might never want to breastfeed and reasons why people might have stopped. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Right, let me pop you into some groups. Breakout rooms. Okay. Add room, add room. Okay. Assign. Come on, give me some names to assign. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if you're in the 3 group, that's going to be Alethea, Fiona and Habiba. One of you reasons why people might be breastfeeding. One of you reasons why people might stop having started. And one of you reasons why people might never choose to start. And then Bella and Leanne will be in a pair. So one of you will do reasons to breastfeed and one of you will do the combined reasons to not breastfeed or reasons to stop. So we'll have maybe 4 or 5 minutes on this and I'll just do a little bit of a call round to the others to see where they are. Okay. Is that everybody back? Yes, it is. Super. Yeah, I've left a couple of texts, nothing back from the others so far, so a bit perplexed by that. Okay, so first of all, who was talking about why people might choose to breastfeed? Who out of you is talking about that?
That was Fiona in our group.
Fiona, do you want to get started? Why would people choose to breastfeed? Oh, I can't hear you. And you're on mute.
Oh, I'm on mute. Sorry.
There we go. You've said
Yeah.
I'm mute also.
Yeah, people choose to breastfeed to bond with their child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even
important, yeah.
Yeah, bonding. It saves time.
Mm-hmm.
And money as well.
Yep, time and money, all important things, aren't they, when you're having a baby?
Yeah. What else?
That's it. No?
Yeah.
Who else was talking about pro breastfeeding, why people would choose to breastfeed?
Bella was too.
Bella, do you want to share?
Yeah. Mother chose the breastfeed because it's easier for the baby and for the mom also, and it's more natural and cheaper, less time to prepare. Breastfeeding can sleep easily, and also the mother. And then it's to avoid also reflux from formula. What else? And no washing or sterilizing butter. It's more simpler. And then the mother no need to stand to prepare the baby butter. Just open it and that's it.
So with all of those reasons why women would breastfeed, why would they stop or why would they not start in the first place? Who would
You want to go, Olivia?
Yeah. So why babies would why babies? Why
My
mothers?
baby, so there you go, loads of choices. Even said that her first one had a big choice, didn't he?
Yeah, some women don't like the thought of it. Some women are scared it's going to be painful. Some are scared of negativity that they might receive in public. the previous lack of support. So if it's a second or third baby, if they were unsuccessful in attempting breastfeeding the first time, they might just decide not to try with the second or third. They might decide that it's easier to formula feed if they have multiples. Want to know, baby. I have no idea what I've written there. And oh yeah, so some people will want to know how much the baby's feeding.
Yeah, knowing how much is going in.
Do the calorie count and know exactly what their baby's getting. And some might do it because they feel there's more calories in formula fed. So particularly if a baby's got a lower birth weight or they're preterm, a parent might be more fixated on them getting the calories.
Yeah, especially if they've been in hospital and they've been feeding very specific amounts. It's really tough to come out of hospital having been told your baby needs 40 ml every 2 hours to go, boobs. Boobs.
Yeah, that's all I've got.
Okay, who else is talking about that?
Yeah, I was too. A reason that they stop is because maybe the mother is returning to work, so she wouldn't be around as often, or she's not producing enough milk for the baby's needs. And also, I think this is correct, but you might contradict me, I don't actually know, is that maybe the baby has an allergy and the mum doesn't want to change her diet. Is that correct? Like, say the baby has a cow's milk allergy and the mum eats and drinks dairy.
Yeah, so fundamentally, when we're talking about allergies, breast milk is the best option in terms of babies and allergies. And yes, if there's a dairy allergy, then if it's a breastfed baby, it will be less likely to be less of an intolerance anyway, because the dairy is mediated through the mother's breast milk. But if it is a strong allergy, then the only way to treat that allergy, absolutely, is by going dairy free, which is super hard. So a dairy allergy means you can't have normal cow's or goat's milk because it's dairy. So then babies have to go on to hydrologized formulas, which are where the milk protein is partially broken down, or sometimes amino acid formulas where it's very, very broken down. So although it is still dairy, the proteins of that dairy is broken down before it even gets to the baby. So yes, if you had a super allergic baby and a dairy-free diet was not right for you, then absolute formula would be a very valid choice. It's a valid choice anyway, but it would be a particularly obvious thing to suggest in that circumstance, because that's a big ask of a mum.
Yeah, cutting out cheese. And as well, your milk could dry up. There's another reason, obviously, why they might not decide to breastfeed is maybe there's pressure of the family history, like the grandmother, her mum didn't breastfeed, so she puts pressure on her not to.
Pressure is huge. And if I had £1 for everyone who said, well, I did X and it was fine, and if you're a mum hearing that, well, I formula fed you, what's the problem, is really difficult then for mum to come back. And then the other family thing that often comes up is dad saying, but I want to bond with the baby. Because obviously the only way that you can bond with a baby is through the power of your breasts. There is no other way. And it's amazing, these mothers who have infants in neonatal intensive care in incubators who can't feed them because they're too young, who manage to bond with their babies. But hey, so I want to bond with the baby from the dad or the partner can be a powerful push factor, although it's not necessarily one that is the right way to address it. But those family push factors are huge. Who haven't we heard from?
Okay.
Habiba?
Yeah, why we stop? Because of infections.
So mum being unwell.
Yeah.
Really rough, if you're feeling really rough.
I know. And cracked nipples sometimes.
Yeah.
And
get through.
When babies start teething as well, because they can bite your nipples.
Oh yes. That can definitely be a push factor.
Yeah, and people want to go back to work. She mentioned it. And sometimes it's some parents find it very painful and sensitive.
Mhm.
Sometimes.
Yeah, the going back to work can be a big push factor there, you mentioned.
Yeah. And some parents don't want to wake up during the night, but I don't know about that, but you still wake up to get the bottle as well.
You can indeed. There is certainly a prevalent expectation that formula-fed babies will sleep better. And we know that over 24 hours, it's fundamentally the same, but formula-fed babies can sleep for longer chunks, although then you've got to make up formula bottles, which when you are a night nurse or a night maternity nurse, or it's your night duty, you will soon realise, if you haven't already, that is a long thing to do with a crying baby. You will wish for the power of the boobs. Great, some really good reasons there. Okay, let's scroll down. Hoobie-dooby-dooby-doo. Okay, so we're going to look a bit at what's inside a breast. So this isn't knitted, is a boob. And inside my boob, if I click off the share screen, you'll be able to see. Stop that share moment. Pin my video. Okay, so this is inside my boob here. So the outside is here with the nipple. This is called the areola. There are lots of different ways that people say that though. What we often do when we're talking with clients is to say the coloured part or the darker coloured part. Because in schools, we don't teach a lot about boobs. You come out of school knowing how to draw a perfect set of, testicles, a perfect set of ovaries and the inside of a heart. You don't know about boobs, which is amazing because 50% of us have them. So we'll talk about the areola, but that is something that clients may not know the name of. So the coloured or darker part might work. And then inside, there we go, we have, so we've got skin here, and then we've got fat all in here, and then below the fat layer here, got all the little alveoli and the little ducts that run to the nipple here, which is where everything comes out. So the milk storage is in these alveoli. This is where the milk is made and stored. Okay, so if I pop back to the screen, we've got that in a little diagram. I quite like my model though. And this helps explain why when we want to express milk, we want to hand express and get the milk out, we need to work on the part of the breast that is further back than the nipple, because that's where the milk is being made and stored. And up until about 2005, there was actually a different model of what a breast looked like. And where it says areola, can you see there are the ducts coming just behind there through to the nipple? Every model of a breast up until 2005 had a little sac just behind the nipple where they thought that milk pooled and that there were little sort of reservoirs of milk kept there. And the reason for that was that the last bit of research on boobs was done in the 1800s, and it was done, this is not very nice by the way, it was done by looking at cadavers, getting dead people, and they cut them up like in an autopsy, and they would fill these ducts with wax to see how the milk flowed through. And if you put wax into a boob, what happens is it pools just behind the nipple. So for 100 years, everybody assumed that that's how breasts work, and no one thought to go and check. So we all thought in breastfeeding support that when you were going to support a mum and you wanted to get milk out, then you need to be working on these ducts just here where all of those reservoirs were, just behind the nipple, because that's what the autopsy models showed. And then in 2005, some bright spark had the idea of ultrasounding a live woman. And it turned out that those didn't exist at all. It was simply an artifact of pushing wax into the body. It pooled there. That was not how boobs worked at all. The milk doesn't stay hidden just behind the nipple, ready to come out. That's absolute bunkum. But until this century, we did not know that, because breastfeeding is not a big area for research. So now that we know that the milk is further back in these alveoli rather than sitting just behind the nipple, that helps when we're teaching parents to express, which we'll do later on, is to actually work on the breast at the right part of the breast, because now we know a little bit what's inside. But again, how a baby gets the milk out is something that's only just being looked into. And we thought for a long time it was peristalsis, which is the movement of a tongue, a bit like a wiggly worm or a caterpillar. If you imagine that movement of the tongue, we thought that that was what got the milk out. But actually, very new ultrasound shows it seems to be a little more based around a vacuum. And it's the vacuum, the negative pressure, that is drawing the milk out. But again, these ultrasounds of babies feeding are very, very, very recent science. So breastfeeding is something where there's a lot of books that need to get up to date. So be very careful where you get your breastfeeding information from, because it can just be a 10-year-old book and it can be completely out of date because of the new ultrasounds. So that's what's inside our breasts, and it's an absolute shocker that we don't get taught that at school. Who remembers on the internet about a year ago a picture, it was from an exhibition in London where they had lots of cadavers and bodies without the skin. And there was a picture going around on the internet of the breast looking like a flower. I'm going to try and bring it up if I can. It's very interesting and completely wrong. And all over the internet were a whole load of women going, my God, I didn't know I had one of those inside me. Turns out they didn't. But we don't teach girls, women or boys about what their breasts look like. Let me just see if I can find the picture. See who, here it is. Okay. Share the right picture. Right, new share. Right, can everybody see pictures of a breast looking a bit like a flower?
Yeah.
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 So this image went around the internet a couple of years ago, and it's from an exhibition, and it's technically correct. They did make a real life copy, and all over the internet were people going, I have no idea that is what was inside. Oh my God, this is a revelation. And then on the internet were a whole load of breastfeeding specialists going, that's not quite right. Because, for one, the amount of these ducts around varies, and it varies from about 4 to 20 inside a woman. And you'll only know if you've had an ultrasound and it looks into it how many you've got. So it's a really important thing, because if you are a younger woman and you're thinking of getting breast surgery, breast enlargement, breast reduction, whatever, and your surgeon says, we just need to cut a few ducts to do whatever you chose with your breasts, and you think that you've got all of these ducts to play with, would that impact on you? So, I might want to breastfeed in the future. Yeah, it's fine. He or she will cut a few ducts. Is it a problem? No. But if you actually know that some women do have 20 and some women have 4, and everywhere in between, that might influence your decision of what the surgeon should do, mightn't it?
Yeah.
And also, the idea that taking away the fat has made these all very, very equal. That is not how they sit within the breast. So imagine a clump of grapes. You know how some of the smaller clumps are further up the stalk and some are further down? Again, this is the same with breasts. This has all been laid out very neatly, but it isn't actually what it looks like inside. So let's find here. Can you see the picture I've just highlighted?
Yeah.
This is about breast cancer, but actually if you look at that area that it, the green that it goes up to, the ducts to the breast can actually go all the way up to underneath the armpit.
The armpits, yeah.
So again, if you just look at that first picture, it looks like they're just in the boob area, doesn't it? Whereas actually the milk making equipment can go all the way up towards your armpit. So if you're a new mum and you've got a super swelling up here, are you necessarily going to think it's anything to do with breastfeeding? Not unless
No.
someone's actually explained what's inside your body to you. So yeah, I have a big issue with how little we actually share with women what is inside their body. And if you don't know, you can't be informed about what's happening with it. Let me go back to my share screen. Okay. So now we know what's inside, we're going to have a little bit of a look at how milk is made. Would people like to take a quick loo break now?
I'm okay if anyone needs to.
Okay, everybody's okay, but if you do need to pop away, feel free, and you've got the recording. So lactogenesis. Lactogenesis is what we call the process of milk making. And it's in distinct stages. And I think there used to be an advert, didn't there, for hair going, this is the science part.
Science.
Definitely the science part. So colostrum, which is the first milk ready for the baby, starts to be made in every woman's body from 16 to 26 weeks. Whether you are planning to formula feed or not, this is what happens inside your body. And the hormone that rises in pregnancy called progesterone stops that milk coming out. So some women will be a little bit leaky, but we're not having full-blown geysers coming out during pregnancy. And the reason for that is that the progesterone helps stop the leakage. And when the placenta leaves the body, whether it is a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth, the placenta coming out of the body is what triggers the body to drop the progesterone level. And as the progesterone level drops, that starts to help the body go, time to get the milk out. There's other hormones that will come into play as well. So for the first few days after birth, whether the baby's born at term or whether they're a preterm baby, colostrum is there and ready, perfect for that baby as the first food. And it's really densely packed. It's a superfood. So it's, those little tiny yogurts in the supermarket that you're meant to drink them, and they're very, very tiny and full of goodness. Yep. It's one of those. It's an espresso, not a cappuccino. Having these sort of metaphors can be really good with clients. So find your own that work for you, because trying to explain it in a less sciencey way can be really good to help women to understand what's happening. So it's really jam-packed. It's espresso, not a cappuccino, and it's ready for very little and often feeding. So we're going to go back to what the baby's expecting. When a baby comes back, if you've watched your 4th trimester videos already, you'll know it's expecting to be here. Yep, right on my chest. If it's here, what can it do all day long? On, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And that is what the body is expecting it to do over those first few days. So the baby for 9 months has had always on food. It's had the umbilical cord and it's been getting all of its nutrients via there. So it's never felt hungry or thirsty, because that's a consistent flowing pathway all the way through. As soon as it comes out, the first transition is to not having nutrition all the time. So transitioning from always on buffet to every 4 hours is a kind of a big step, right? So you're coming off a cruise and you have been used to that cruise buffet. You're snacking all day, aren't you? Then you have to go back to work and you have to wait for your lunch. This is very difficult. It's the same for a baby. So the baby is actually born expecting to be similar to the always on nutrition by being on, off, on, off, on, off the breast. But if women aren't prepared for that and they're expecting to feed their baby every couple of hours or so, this is one of the reasons why breastfeeding is super tough in the early days. So baby could take a drop of colostrum and be sustained for a few minutes, and then take another drop of colostrum and be sustained for another few minutes. And that is what baby is expecting to do. And we try and fit babies into a model of have a good feed, have a lay down. Wait, have a good feed, have a lay down. But that's not what this little one is expecting. So there's a theory, and I say it's a theory because we're fairly sure about this, but it's simply money is not in breastfeeding research. If you want to make money as a scientist, don't go and look at boobs because there's no cash in it. But prolactin receptor theory suggests that all in these alveoli are little prolactin receptors. And the frequent sucking turns these receptors on. It sort of goes ping, oh yes, what we needed. It's a little bit, when I'm talking to families, about opening gateways. So if the more the baby sucks, the more gateways are opened, and those are the prolactin receptors. And the prolactin receptors, when they're open, mean more milk can flow through. So early sucking, we think, primes the breast to have as many prolactin receptors turned on, so light switches turned on, so as much milk can flow through those gates as possible. Questions? Okay, so there's two.
Sorry, a quick question.
Go for it.
Do we talk about I don't know the name of it, but the pre milk that's the sweet?
That's the colostrum that we were talking about.
Oh, that is the colostrum.
The word for that is colostrum. It's good for you to know, but with clients, use words that they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
So if you're saying kind of pre-milk, then that's fine for them, but the word we'll use is colostrum, and that's that nutrient dense that's ready there in the boobs, ready for a baby, even if it's premature.
Mm-hmm.
So first few days, two big jobs. One is on-off feeding to mimic the baby having that always on umbilical cord. And two is sucking frequently to prime the breasts and open those prolactin receptors. Okay, so when the progesterone level drops, which is from the placenta, prolactin rises. And prolactin is one of the hormones involved in the milk making. And they work together to trigger lactogenesis 2. So lactogenesis 1 was the colostrum starting to be made before baby's even here. Lactogenesis 2 is the change from that colostrum, the sweet, sticky, very, very small amounts milk, through to what we call mature milk, which looks a bit more like coming out of a cow. And in the middle of that is transitional milk. It's not just one or the other, it is a change from one to the other. And that often starts between days 3 and 5. It can be delayed by traumatic birth, it can be delayed by cesarean, it can be delayed if baby is separated from mum. It can be delayed if someone has a postpartum hemorrhage and they lose a lot of blood. So it can take up to 10 days. Mostly, in most circumstances, we'd expect 3 to 5. And women might describe this as their milk coming in. So that's not scientifically accurate. Their milk hasn't come from anywhere. It is changing all the time. But what you might hear a lot is, I feel my milk coming in, and it means that fullness of breasts coming. And that is actually still transitional milk, not mature milk, because it's a few days of process. If that hasn't happened, something to always have in the back of your head is retained placenta. Retained placenta means there's a fragment of the placenta that's still in the body. When the placenta comes out of the mum, be it vaginally or cesarean, one of the midwife's jobs is to piece it together and to work out, is it whole? Just because I have a knitted placenta. So they will work out and they'll say, well, this is the rough side and this is the smooth side. On the rough side, is there any bit that looks like there's a chunk missing? And they literally jigsaw puzzle it together to go, is this whole? Mostly it's a yes. If there is even the smallest fragment that is left stuck to the uterus, that will delay milk coming in, because the hormone that needs to drop is progesterone. And if there's placental fragments in the body, that progesterone will not drop. So if you've got a mum who is not having that transition, something to think about is there a possibility of a retained placenta or retained placenta fragment? And that would certainly cause an infection as well. So it may just be, just is the wrong word. It may be that it was a traumatic or cesarean birth and that's delaying a little bit, but just something to be aware. One of the key signs of a retained placenta is milk not coming in. So that's always something that you'd ask her to check with her midwife. If her milk isn't coming in between day 3 and 5, we're wanting that woman to go back to her midwife and be informing them so that they can keep an eye out, and they will have that in the back of their minds as well. Mm-hmm. So around day 5, the milk changes and the control changes. So the first part of that milk production, lactogenesis 1, the colostrum being produced, and lactogenesis 2, which is that transition from colostrum to mature milk, that's all hormonal. We call it endocrine control. The woman has no choice about that. Her body just does. Around day 5, when the milk is starting to mature, it switches to local control or autocrine control. And that means instead of it just happening, the milk has to come out for more milk to be made. So this is where the baby or the expressing kit or the hands expressing is the key feature. So everything else up until now will just happen. From now on, for mum to make more milk, milk needs to leave the breast. And that is the trigger for more milk to be made from this point. So women who've had a tough start to their breastfeeding journey and have had formula top-ups often with their baby. 1, their baby may be more used to large volumes. 2, their prolactin receptors gates, all those gates might not have quite opened. And 3, their hormone levels will be different because the baby sucking creates oxytocin, which is a letdown hormone. So it helps the milk to come out. So when a mum's had early formula top-ups, there's some things to be aware of. But when they get to day 5 and the milk is produced, those early challenges can be overcome through rapid withdrawal of that milk, be it via a baby or via a pump. The more that comes out, the more that will be made. If they had no sucking at all and none of those, not none, but few of those prolactin receptors were triggered, they may always have some supply problems in terms of there aren't many gates for the milk to come through. Which is why even if they're having trouble and they're topping up their baby the first few days, encouraging the baby to be on the boob and sucking is a really good thing because it's helping the whole journey go forward. So from day 5-ish, the more milk that is removed, the more milk that is made. And that's because of another hormone called the feedback inhibitor of lactation, or FIL. And when the breasts are full, the production of this protein called FIL increases. And that's why we don't explode. So milk's being produced, there's more FIL protein within the milk in the breast. And that protein sends messages to the brain to go, stop making milk, or to be precise, make less milk. There's never a stop, but there's a make less. So we don't explode. So that boob will stay full. So how we make more milk? Take milk out of the boob. Best way to do that, a well-attached baby. The second best way to do that, expressing milk. If neither of those things happen, eventually that breast will just stop making milk. And it is local as in each breast. So for women who've got a mastectomy, so they've only got one breast, for example, that breast is completely controlled on its own, even though there's no breast tissue on the other side. If a mum only ever fed on one side, say she's has what's the word? Not paraplegic. Can't think of the word. So she's only got use of one arm, not the other. And so she always holds her baby on one side and only feeds from that one breast. The other breast would eventually stop making milk. So each breast needs milk to be made by milk coming out of it. Prolactin levels, which help to make the milk, are highest at night, and they peak around 45 minutes after a feed. So after a feed's finished, about 45 minutes later, the signal is highest to make more milk. And the other hormone to do with this is the oxytocin, which is that love hormone that we've talked about before. You get it from snuggling the baby, smelling their head. That hormone helps with the letdown, and that's the milk coming out. We call that the milk ejection reflex. And within a minute of stimulation, be that nipple stimulation manually with your fingers, or from the baby being on there, those levels will rise, milk will start to come out. Any questions on this part? It's definitely all the science.
Just quickly, the colostrum, does it go away completely then? Because I was under the assumption that it was always at the front at the beginning of a feed.
Right. Let me go on about two more slides. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it isn't. Colostrum transitions into mature milk.
Yeah.
So imagine your espresso. What happens if you put lots of milk in it? It turns into a cappuccino.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't drink coffee. I might be wrong. But I think that's how it works. Yeah, it's not that the espresso is the top layer. It all dilutes, doesn't it? So that colostrum dilutes and changes into transitional milk and then into mature milk. So it's a physical change, a bit like babies turn into adults via puberty.
Right, so after day 5, the colostrum is diluted to mature milk.
Diluted is probably the wrong word for me to have used, I'm afraid there. That is changed into mature milk. Another good way to think was turn on the cold tap and it stays cold. Turn on the hot tap, it's cold at first, then it warms up. You can't get that cold back, can you? Once it's warmed up. Yeah. So imagine the cold as the first bit of that colostrum. But we will go on to how milk is made up in a few slides' time. Great question. Okay. I'm going to ask you to draw, please, a brief timeline of what happens for the milk from pregnancy to that day 5 to 6 milk being established. You can be factual or artistic. So this is an opportunity for you to just reflect over those last few slides, which are quite intensive in terms of the science. Can you timeline, starting at 16 to 26 weeks, colostrum in the body? What are the changes that happen? We'll just take a couple of minutes to do this. Right, I'm going to bring up a whiteboard so we can make a kind of a group effort on this one. And you'll all see quite how unarty I am. Right, that's my breastfeeding journey. Flash, you are early. You're not allowed to disturb us, dog, for another 35 minutes. Indeed. Woof, woof. Okay, so let's start with 16 to 26 weeks. What do we know is happening then?
Start to
produce.
That's the colostrum is being made, produced.
Okay. What's the next change that someone's put on? What's the next thing anyone's put on?
Is it estrogen is produced?
Estrogen is produced, but estrogen hasn't got anything to do with the milk making cycle in this part. You mean progesterone?
Yeah, progesterone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all sound very similar, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
So progesterone levels rise, and what does that do? What does progesterone levels rising do? Think about it. It stopped something. What did it stop?
The hormones?
It wasn't the hormones, no. What would you not want to do when you're pregnant? If you're making milk, you're making this colostrum, and you're still
lactating.
Sorry?
Does it stop it lactating?
It stops it coming out. It suppresses it, yes.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so very good. And what's the next thing anyone's got on theirs?
The next thing on mine is
3 to
sort of
5 days.
feeding very little and very frequently in the first couple of days. If I skip too far ahead.
Okay, I think we've definitely skipped a big part of the journey. Having a baby.
Oh, you will.
Most people think it's a good part of the having a baby thing, yeah. So the baby's born.
Yeah.
And what else happened when the baby's born? Baby comes first, what comes next?
The placenta.
Placenta is also born.
Placenta also.
And why has this got anything to do with milk making, the placenta being born?
Because it doesn't...
The progesterone levels decrease, don't they, after
That's
the placenta is, yeah. Okay.
Decrease. And what other hormone does anyone remember rises?
Yeah, write it down. Hold on.
Is that prolactin?
Yep. Prolactin levels rise. Okay, so that's the hormone happening there. So then baby's out now, so you get to say your bit now. What does baby do?
So the first couple of days, the baby feeds on the colostrum and has very small amounts very frequently. So very little and very often.
And what impact does that? It feeds the baby. What other impact does that have?
It builds the baby's immunity and provides them with rich nutrients.
Yeah. What impact does it have on the mother's body? It did a special job, this frequent feeding, over the first few days. It was a theory.
The prolactin receptor theory, that the more the baby sucks, the more milk's produced.
Yeah. So it's not at that point that the more the baby sucks, the more milk's produced. The prolactin receptor theory is the more the baby sucks, the more prolactin receptors are activated.
Okay.
They're the gateways for the milk. So that's not about milk production, it's about gateways. Okay. So what's the next change or transition on the journey?
I can't remember, but it was the 30 hours.
Yep, 30 to 50 hours. That
Yeah,
was the time when the next change happened, yes?
Yeah, but I can't remember the change.
Okay, anyone else going to help Leanne out?
3 to 5
That's
days, I think.
transitional milk.
3 to 5 days.
Transitional milk.
Yes, yep.
The
3 to 5
colostrum
days.
changes. The colostrum changes.
Absolutely. So 30 to 50 hours. So it's 3 to 5 days. Changes and transitions. So it's that change starts at 30 to 35 hours is when it starts, and 3 to 5 days is how long the change is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Transitions to mature milk. Okay. So what's the next big thing we need to remember? So all of this is going to happen whether you like it or not. Even if you're planning to formula feed, this is what your boobs will do. So what's the next big change?
Around 50 to 73 hours postpartum.
Yep.
And the mother of birth parent will feel
It will
the
become.
full
Sorry.
engorged feeling.
Yes. So again, it's about 3 to 5 days. We have an engorged feeling. Absolutely right. Let me move that to there. That's all part of the same aspect. Okay, so engorged feelings happen. Baby's now feeding on larger quantities of milk. So all the way through this, the quantities increasing. Let me put that in. So it's increasing very rapidly over these few days as the stomach is starting to enlarge. So 3 to 5 days, the engorged feelings happened. Baby's now having quite large amounts of milk. What else is going to change?
Was it called the autocrine? It's the supply and demand.
Yes. Changes from endocrine to autocrine system.
Yeah.
That's a change from hormonal to supply demand.
That's day 5, isn't it?
That is
Around.
days 5.
Yeah, around day 5.
Yeah, around day 5.
I mean, there are no cut-offs here. It is this process is a changeable process, but we're talking around day 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we've got mature milk. But we know that this isn't the end of the process, because actually the milk will continue to change over time. What will change this milk? What aspects will change this milk?
If there's any illnesses.
Yeah. which is why it's so important to keep mums and babies together, because if mum and baby are in the same room in the same airspace, they'll have the same bugs around, and the mum's going to do a good job of creating antibodies for them. If you separate the mum and baby, the mum can't do that. Okay, why else might milk change over time?
Is it to do with the feel too, or is that that doesn't really change it? The feel.
Do you mean?
Yeah, the feel that the
Yeah,
protein
so-
to supply the milk. Yeah.
It's not about the milk change. Yes and no. I'm going to put it in. Yes. So
Yeah.
the feedback inhibit lactation. So it helps to tell when to make more milk. Illnesses change milk. Think about nice sunny weather. What else changes milk?
Oh yeah,
Seasons.
It waters down if it's hot, doesn't it? Is that the
Yeah.
right word? Waters
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
Yes and no. Yeah, I know exactly
Well,
what you
yeah,
mean. So
with more
so
water
hot
and
is-
less. Yeah.
higher water content.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And in terms of how much milk is made, after about it ramps up. The first 2 weeks is like, whoa, huge difference in amount. 2 weeks to 6 to 8 weeks is steadily increasing. After 6 weeks, actually, it levels off until about 6 months. So when you're formula feeding your clients' babies, as they get bigger, they will have more milk, right? So you'll go from a little tiny bottle to one of these to a big old chunky bottle by the time they're 6 months, or something about that tall, right? They are having larger quantities. That does not happen with breast milk. The baby's intake at about 6 weeks is fundamentally the same as about 6 months before they start to wean. So the milk is changing the nutrients, the calorie density, the protein density, the carbohydrate density to grow that baby. But it doesn't increase the quantity fundamentally. So what mum's doing, especially that first 2 weeks and then the first 6 weeks, is setting them up for the whole of the rest of their breastfeeding journey. So if they're topping up with formula over those first 2 weeks, they are inhibiting the whole of their journey. It doesn't mean it's completely irrecoverable, but certainly it's going to be an uphill struggle to change after that first sort of 2 or so weeks. And after about 6 weeks, that's, unless you're working really closely with a lactation consultant and you are doing a lot of extra work with pumping, a lot of extra work, you're pretty much then stuck with this is the milk supply you've got. Okay.
And a quick question.
Absolutely.
When you breastfeed a baby and they obviously after 6 months, so do you not decrease when they start eating solids with the breast?
So after 6 months, the breast milk amount tends to decrease because the solids is going up.
Yeah.
So if you're not weaning until 6 months, 6 weeks to 6 months is the same. And then milk supply goes down when the baby's taking more solids. Just like in a formula fed baby at that point, you'd be giving less formula.
Yeah.
So the solids are then taking, tummy time, as it were. But yeah, the big difference is that formula goes up over 6 months. Breast milk after 6 weeks does pretty much.
And is that natural? So your body will start producing less because it knows, or how?
Well, what's the process after 5 days that is controlling how much milk is coming out?
The supply and demand, yeah. Okay, so yeah, okay. Yeah.
So if the baby is feeding either less frequently,
yeah,
or is feeding less, is taking less, or is there for less time, then the upshot of that is less milk will then be made. It's a very gradual procedure.
But if they don't finish, obviously, because you said your breast is full.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't finish, obviously, and they're doing it less frequently, will that milk dry up?
For milk to dry up, you would need to stop breastfeeding completely. So
okay, it takes a long time.
Who here was breastfeeding a 2-year-old? Someone
No,
said they breastfed up to 3 years.
I
Yeah,
think
Fiona.
Fiona.
Ah,
I
Fiona,
think
are
the
you
other
here?
was 2, yeah.
I see your
No.
picture. Hello. When you were breastfeeding your 2-year-old, were
Yeah.
they feeding every 2 hours?
Yes.
Yeah. And
I
think
did.
about the end of the journey. Did you stop flat or did you decrease? Like,
I decreased. Yeah. I
and
decreased.
yeah. So whether it's 2 years or 2 months, generally, if a mum drops a feed every few days, the breasts go, that's not needed then.
Yeah.
Generally decrease. Is that what happened to you?
Yes, that's right.
So the problem comes when mums have to or decide to go, that's it, stop. It might be a health issue or it might be a choice. And the breasts are like, whoa, we've still got all the milk. And that's when we can have engorgement and problems. So if the mum is choosing to move away from breastfeeding, dropping a feed every few days is the best way of her managing her own supply.
Okay.
Okay, so some important facts. Okay, this is a 2-hour session on breastfeeding, and I have actually got planned a 2-day session on breastfeeding. So you are only getting the absolute skim of the top of the knowledge here, okay? Breast size is not related to milk capacity. Big boobs do not make more milk. Big boobs have more fat in them. So fat storage, not glandular tissue, and not the amount of these things, the alveoli. So you could have a tiny breast and lots of these, or a huge breast and few of these. The size is all to do with this fat, okay? There is also no correlation between the amount of ducts and the size of the boob. So you could have a big old boob, but only 4 or 5 of those ducts coming out, or you can have a smaller boob with 20. So you can't judge by looking. Whatever the capacity of the breast, over 24 hours, mothers and birthing people make a similar amount of milk. So if you've got 2 identical babies and one mum has a large capacity, not size of boob, but a large capacity, lots and lots of these alveoles here, and the other one has a small capacity, one will feed more frequently and fill up more frequently and feed more frequently and fill up more frequently, and the other one will feed less frequently and fill up less frequently, but over the 24 hours, baby will take about the same amount. It's the same as if you drove to Portsmouth. Oh, Londoners, aren't you? Yeah. So you drove from London to Portsmouth in a mini metro, cars and coffee. I'm not good. Little mini with a tiny, tiny engine and a little, fuel tank, 1.2 litre. Yeah. Every so often you can stop at the service station, put a little bit more in. Or the other person drives in a, Range Rover, 2.6 litre. So they can put 2.6 litres of fuel. I don't know how cars work, do I? They can put a lot of fuel in their car. Will you still both get to Portsmouth?
Yeah.
Will you fundamentally have used the same amount of petrol? Pretty much.
No.
Okay, that's where the car metaphor falls down, isn't it? Assume the cars are both equally economical. It's just one has a big petrol tank and one has a small one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll have used the same amount of petrol. It's just one has a big tank and filled twice, and one has a small tank and filled 4 times. But it still takes the same amount of petrol to get from London to Portsmouth. And that's the same with the boobs. I need to learn more about that. So breasts do not store large quantities of milk. Milk is produced constantly in small amounts. The feedback inhibitor, that fill protein, slows production. So the breast is full up, it's producing less. But as soon as milk starts to come out, more milk is being made. My hot water tank, as soon as you put the hot water on, the cold then fills into the hot water and it starts to heat up more. Yeah, it's a really good tank. It's not one of those where you empty the hot water tank and that's it. That's your lot. It consistently fills and consistently heats. It's a combi boiler. So boobs are combi boilers. They keep making milk all the time. There's no such thing as an empty breast. So if mum I haven't got any milk left, that technically isn't true. It may well be that mum feels that she's not full anymore. There will be though milk being produced in response to that baby having sucked and drawn milk out. Breasts can have between 4 and 18 duct endings, so different amount of milk will be ejected by different breasts during the same time frame. you know, lots of little holes or a few little holes, but over the feed, the baby will have a similar amount of milk. Analogies, so a bit like my cars. Minis and estates, that's what I was trying to say. Both parents can drive the same journey, one will have more stops than the other. Breasts are a river, not a lake. It's constantly being made. A seedling, oh, I like this one. A seedling will grow if you constantly add 1 drop of water. Yeah, so you're growing a plant. If you just go drop, 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 that plant will be getting enough water to grow. Same thing with the baby. The very, very new baby is not primed to have that much water and then nothing for 4 hours. It's primed to go drop, 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 and that's what grows that baby. Like a bottle of squeezy honey, you squeeze the bottle, not the tip, to get the honey. So if you think of a squeezy honey pod, you're going to go this with it, yeah? You're not going to do this. Squeeze the tip of it. Nothing will come out of your honey. Boobs are the same. This is the bit that needs to be manipulated if you're going to squeeze it out, not this bit. And that's what the baby does, is go onto the breast, not onto the nipple. If it's on the nipple, it's not going to get much out, and it's going to be very painful. Breasts are a bit like a bakery. Bear with me. Just like the bakery will bake how much bread was ordered, so breasts will produce more or less according to what the baby's ordered. So when babies are cluster feeding in the evening, that completely normal on off the boob, the baby's going, more milk please. This is me telling you I would like more milk. And overnight, between about 10 and 3 is where the majority of the milk is produced. So that evening cluster feed leads to more milk production overnight. Okay, questions?
I do have a question, but I've just forgotten. Oh yeah, how long would you say on average a feed lasts, or is there not an average?
There totally is, and it's about 2 slides time. But
Sorry, I keep doing that, sorry.
You're ahead of the game, but we have come to the slide that answers your previous question. So you talked about, was it colostrum first? And no, the colostrum transitions into mature milk. And we used to talk of milk being made up of 2 parts, foremilk and hind milk. Who's heard of that before? Foremilk and hind milk.
Yeah.
And that was the idea that there was a watery milk at the start of the feed and then a fatty milk at the end. And they're a bit like 2 different things. This is not the case. There is milk, but a bit like it separates out. So who's had gold top milk before ever, or has seen it in the shops? Yeah. If you shake it, it's all one milk. If you leave it in the fridge, it separates a little bit. Yeah. But it's still the same milk. It was made in the cow, it came out the same way. It's not 2 different types of milk that have been put in the same bottle. It's the same milk, and the fat content has changed where the milk separates. It's a bit like that with boobs. Milk is made, milk is milk is milk. However, because of how milk comes out, the amount of fat in the milk changes over the feed, because the milk was being made in there, but the fatty molecules will tend to stick. They're sticky and they tend to stick to the ducts. So when a baby's initially sucking, what comes out easiest is the watery aspect of the milk. And then what comes out is the fattier aspect. It's not like there's no fat and there's loads. It's a gradual change. So the more the baby has emptied the breast, the more they're now having to work harder to get the fattier modules out. They're literally having to suck the damn things out because they're stuck to the sides of the ducts. So it's not that there is foremilk and hind milk and they are separate things. It's the milk is all there, but the baby is accessing different components of the milk at different types of the feed, different parts of the feed. How I do this in person with the demonstration is I mix oil and water together and I shake it all up, put it in a bowl, and I take a sponge and I squeeze. And if I've got a fatty or oily, watery mix, the first thing that comes out is mostly water. And as I continue to squeeze the sponge, we get more droplets of oil. And I continue to squeeze and it's even more oily, because that's the stuff that's stuck to the inside of the sponge. And that's a bit like what's happening inside the boob.
Yeah.
So the longer the feed, generally, the more the baby is getting that fattier milk content, because those fat modules are now moving down the ducts. If they have a short feed, then the fat content, if they have another short feed quite soon after, is going to be quite high, because it doesn't retract. It doesn't all disappear. If they've had a little bit of a feed and they go away and have a little bit more of a feed, they're going to come back at sort of step 2 of the fattier milk coming out. So sometimes babies might go boob 1, boob 2, boob 1, because actually they want to go back to that fattier aspect of the milk at the end of that feed.
So would you say that if they just feed for a shorter time, they are less full because they're not getting the higher fat content?
Generally, although some babies are very efficient.
Okay.
So it's not a rule. If you've only got a 5-minute feed, you're not full. Because some babies will be mega efficient.
Yeah, okay.
And remember also that breasts have different capacities. So some babies will be, that's it, because mum has a smaller breast capacity and they'll come back to it more frequently.
Yeah.
This is a biggie. Someone asked about this on the first session. Milk production is not generally affected by diet. You can eat whatever you want when you're breastfeeding. There's nothing to avoid. Unless you see a particular effect on your baby. So for example, a baby with a dairy milk allergy, known as a cow's milk protein allergy, will get unwell and pukey if mum has a lot of dairy, because that will pass through. So if it's an allergy, yes, that will have an impact. If, however, you hear things like, oh, you should stay away from brassicas, you should stay away from cauliflowers when you're breastfeeding because it makes baby windy. That's just rubbish.
Okay.
So if there is an allergy going on, yes, that can have an impact. But fundamentally, mum can eat whatever she wants. There is no such thing as eating well to make better milk. Mum should eat well because it will make her healthy and keep her well. But if she just ate McDonald's, her milk would be just as high quality, because the body will prioritise the needs of the baby against the mother's body needs.
Okay.
So even if you just eat McDonald's and you are quite deprived in terms of your vitamins and minerals, the vitamins and minerals you do have will be taken from your bones and put into the milk and given to the baby, because your body wants to keep that baby alive. So unless women are in a quite literal starving situation, unless we're talking about, you know, a famine, you know, area of the world, this is not going to be any clients. Even if mum doesn't eat very well, i.e. not what we would term a healthy diet, her breast milk will be just fine. There is a small amount of evidence saying that the type of fat mum eats will have an impact on the type of fat in the breast milk. So if she only eats high unsaturated fats, then that will have a small impact. But these are real technicalities in terms of milk production. In terms of talking to clients, they can eat what they want and it will be fine. They can have that cake, they can have that salad. Their milk will be the same. There's no such thing as feeding a mum a certain diet to produce a certain type of milk. If mum sees that her baby does something when she always eats X, cut out the X, because there can be some allergies being triggered in the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we're not going to take something out before that happens unless there's a big old family history.
Mm.
So some herbs and foods are called galactagogues, and they are foods that are thought to help produce more milk. Fenugreek is a typical one, fennel sometimes. It's a supplement. It doesn't go instead of frequent milk removal from the breast. If you want to make more milk, take more milk out. That's the rule. If you want to make more milk, you can eat the lactation cookies. They're yummy. But unless you take more milk out, ain't going to make any difference. So there is a small amount of evidence around some foods, but don't go, oh, you're breastfeeding, I need to make you lactation cookies, because what that tells the mum is that your body might not be good enough, but I'm going to give you some food and that will help, which is not how milk is made. Milk is made more because it's being taken out more. And if she likes the cookies, that's great. And they won't do her any harm, and they might do a little bit of good. But that's in addition to breastfeeding support, not instead of. And I tend personally with clients to steer away from giving them anything like that labelled lactation, because it kind of takes away some responsibility to do the hard work of feeding the baby frequently. Or I've eaten them, so that will help me actually feed the baby more or express more. That's what will help. But they taste yummy, so if she wants to eat them, that's fine. We're not doing the video because that was shared on the group on the Facebook page. So if you haven't accessed this video already before the lesson, it's on our big playlist of videos, and it's about 10 minutes, and it's around how to attach baby. So that's one to watch in the video. It's a really comprehensive video, so we won't be going through that in this session because we found out that I can just talk all the time and we go over. So watch the video. The video is full of goodness. Who has watched the video already?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Great stuff. So who's got their baby doll or their teddy? Great. You have seen in the video some different ways of mums holding their babies. Would you all like to try and position your camera so you can be seen and show me a way of holding a baby?
Where's my
Feed
baby?
the
It's
baby.
upstairs.
How would you like
Baby's
to help your baby
upstairs.
feed them?
gonna get my baby, please.
Wait,
Yeah,
I go
sure
and get
thing.
my baby.
Go and get your babies, get your foods or your balloons or your apples, and show me how you're going to hold this baby. Okay, underarm here, yeah, from Alicia.
Could be one like
Got your baby, no, baby is, I'm just showing you what you're trying to, I'm trying to work out what you're doing here. There we go. So, baby's that way. That's what you, right, so another underarm here. Okay, a bit of rugbying. A few people going to get babies.
That's a good twins one here.
Absolutely. Right, swap positions. How else could you feed the baby?
Quite big.
So we've got a laid back breastfeeding over there. And then we've got on baby pillow there. Okay. Right, Bella's grabbed her baby. Habiba's got her baby. Let's see a few baby positions. How are you going to feed your baby? Oh, hello, baby. Show me how you're going to feed. Oh, Habiba's got a bed. I really, really want to show me feeding on the bed. Yeah, you can do laid back feeding. Oh, Leanne's on bed as well. Oh, fantastic. So you've got laid back biological breastfeeding on the bed.
Baby's got crazy hair. I do apologise.
We would not judge your baby for his or her crazy hair. We would love it. Okay, we've got a cross cradle hold from
And I
Habiba.
think one like this as well, no?
Yep, laid back breast. Side lying feeding from Leanne there. So on the bed, hasn't even sat up. Just going to whack the baby on, whack the baby off. Really, really calm feed in the middle of the night.
My cousin's favourite position with us.
Okay, Fiona's got a cradle hold there, so she's got the baby with the head in the crook of her arm and in a typical cradle hold.
Yeah.
So all of these ways you can feed your baby. These are all good ways. And the names are rugby,
Yeah.
laid back or biological, cradle, cross cradle, twin one tandem feeding, which is 2 rugbies, side lying, which is on the bed. You've got koala. No one's shown koala. Koala is,
Koala.
move this down a little bit.
Like this.
Yeah,
Like
Koala's
this.
going to be
Koala.
over, one leg over each, up here. So that's my koala hold.
So the baby's legs are spread.
Baby's legs are spread over my leg.
Right.
Mm.
It's probably not one for a newborn, but
Yeah,
later on.
I'll do. Yeah.
So there are lots of ways for choosing, lots of reasons for choosing different positions. One of them might be if mum has a particularly fast flow. So if she has a fast flow and the milk comes out quite quickly at the beginning, you want to give baby a position where they've got a lot of control. So on an older baby, that koala hold, they can come on and off really easily. On a younger baby, a biological, they can come on and off. If you've got them in a cradle or a cross cradle underneath you, that's just going to keep woof down on them. So they have less control. They might choke on it more, might get a bit more sort of windy because of it. So thinking about how fast milk is coming out will be a reason for mum choosing a different position. If she has a cesarean, she may want to be very protected over her tummy. And it's really good if she's lying down to remember that boobs work 360 degrees. So if her boob is here and she's lying, imagine I'm lying down, baby can feed over her shoulder and feed.
Oh, wow.
It does not have to be over that poorly cesarean scar. It can, if she's laying down, it can be over the shoulder. And if you fed a 2-year-old, you'll know they can feed like this whilst, you know, having a conversation. So boobs work 360. You don't have to hold them in the traditional way, have them get milk. However, there are some things that whichever way your baby is being held is really important. First of all, the parent needs to be comfortable, because they might be here for between 5 and 40 minutes for an average feed. So they need to be super comfortable, and if they're all hunched over, they're not going to sustain that position. Baby needs to be skin to skin if possible, and that's a formula or breastfeeding, because skin to skin will help the oxytocin and the bonding. Close, tummy to mummy. So tummy can be any way round. It doesn't matter which way round the baby is, but we want their tummy to be nice and in. What we don't want is baby to be tummy upwards and turning their head in, because I wouldn't like to drink like that. So we want the tummy to be in line with the head nicely onto mum, wherever that is. So head free, we're not going to hold the baby's head, because if you hold your head and you try and have a drink, you need to tip your head back. We're not even going to put a finger there. We're going to support at the baby's shoulders and trust the baby's head will not fall off, because they come out with forceps and they're absolutely fine. So we're going to be supporting, but we're not holding the baby's head. Support at the shoulders. We're going to make sure they're in line, whichever position they're in. We're going to line them up, their hips and their shoulders, so they're not twisted. And we're going to start nose to nipple. We're not aiming for the nipple to be in the middle of the mouth. We're aiming for the nipple to be adjacent to the nose on that philtrum, that little thing here, nipple holder in between your nose. That's where the nipple can be. We're going to start with the baby's chin into the breast, nipple under there, and then when they're ready, they can move their head back, because I'm not holding their head, gape, and then we can bring baby right in, and they'll have a good mouthful of breast. Once they're on, we can then, if we need to, put cushions underneath. But we don't start with the breastfeeding cushion, because then mum will put the baby on the breastfeeding cushion and she'll hunch over. And the likelihood of that cushion being exactly the right height between her lap and her baby and her boob is quite small. So baby on first, then cushions underneath. So this has gone through quite clearly in the video. So during the feed, they're going to feel a painless drawing sensation. If it's painful, that means that the nipple is not in the right place. So if you take your own thumb and you put it in your mouth, right to the back into the soft palate, that nipple, that top of the thumb is not going to get hurt. But if you have it right at the front, it's going to be on the gum line or that ridgy bit. That's why the nipple hurts. So nipples don't need to toughen up. They need to be further back into the mouth. So if there's nipple pain, it's telling you the nipple is too far forward in the baby's mouth. And we need to support the baby to move it back. So during the feed, we're looking for all of these things. More of the areola, that darker colour, to be visible above here than below here. So we call it asymmetric latch. The nipple is not aiming to be in the middle of the mouth. The nipple is aiming to be right where you put your thumb, right at the back of the mouth and the soft palate. Chin wants to be right onto the boob. Nose generally won't touch the breast, although if you've got a bigger breasted mum, she might just need to put her own finger there to give a little bit of breathing space. Although babies are super, and their noses are sort of little sticky uppy at the side, little babies, so they can breathe through the sides. It's a really good role for dad. When mum says, oh, is he okay, is he breathing? Get dad to put his head right in and watch the nose, and they'll see the little nose going whoo, 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 as the air comes out of it. So babies' noses are very cute for a reason, so that they can breathe when they're near the boob. We'll be looking for the lower jaw moving rhythmically and a pattern of suck, 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 swallow. Suck, 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 swallow. It doesn't have to be 3 sucks. It's just a rhythmic pattern with swallowing. If you were to ask mum to put her finger here, she'll see that baby's lip is down at the bottom, like a little fish, but not at the top. So it only needs to be flanged at the bottom, not the top. And the baby's cheeks are going to be nice and full and rounded. And you're going to support the feed by making sure that mum has food and water, because it's super thirsty work breastfeeding. You're going to offer support and encouragement. So can you see how your baby's doing this? You're going to ask questions about how the mum feels. and value those answers. If she feels pain, there's something wrong there. You're going to remind them what an amazing job they're doing. That's why I put on that little meme of what's your superpower? I make milk. It's really tiring, but it's an amazing thing to do. And then as a maternity nurse, after the feed, you may well be asked to wind, change, and look after the baby. A really good winding position on your, now my video may have switched around because of the way cameras work. This baby is on my right shoulder. My right shoulder is right. And when I wind on this right shoulder, this wonky winding on the diagonal, is because baby's tummy has a little tube coming out, and now it's going to be pointing upwards. If baby is horizontal, it is vertical, that tube is pointing almost horizontal. So if I want the wind to come out, I'm going to give baby every opportunity of the wind just coming up the tube, because the tube is now pointing up. So this idea of wonky winding with baby on your right shoulder, and say if the video is reversed, I apologise, is a really good way of getting wind out. We don't need to do a lot of patting and tapping, we just need to be positional, give the opportunity for that wind to come out. Other people might choose to wind with the baby sitting down and their hand just under the baby's chin. They might do around the world. This is a very, very good way to start winding, because of it's just using the air is likely to go up the tube. And I call it magic winding because often baby will move into that position and just do a little burp. Some breastfed babies will need winding every time, some won't. You won't be able to tell until you've got the baby. They're all different. Almost always formula fed babies will need winding, and if the latch isn't very good, baby will be taking air and will need winding. If the baby was crying at the start of the feed, it's likely to have been taken in and will need winding. And then after the feed's finished, you'll wind, you might change the baby, you'll settle the baby, that's your job. So if mum's side lying feeding in the night, you'll do everything else and give the baby to her to feed and sit there and chat to her. So the feed finishes when the baby comes off the breast, when they're ready. They should look fairly content, might offer the second side. It's good to generally encourage mum to offer the second side and see how she goes, and then might go back to the side one. So it might go 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll get to know your babies, and mum will get to know her baby as to what they tend to take. Majority of babies would take 2 on most feeds, but it's not a given. And at the end of the feed, the baby will look full and contented. We call it milk drunk, where they're just like, and they fall asleep. Probably asleep because breast milk is full of tryptane, which is a sleepy hormone. So we are helping baby to fall asleep by breastfeeding it, because it's got hormone in there that will help mum and baby sleep. So we're just at the end now. I'm very, very nearly to time. What is normal in breastfeeding? We'll do this as a group. How many times in 24 hours does the average baby feed? 6, 11, 23.
7, isn't it?
I've had a 6, I've had a 7. Any advances?
Actually, 24 hours.
24 hours. And when I say newborn, I'm going to say that this is going to be a 2-week-old baby. So let's talk about a 2-week-old baby here.
24.
24 times in 24 hours?
Yeah.
You definitely feel like that.
We'll be feeding all the time.
Or maybe
The
11.
average is actually 11.
11.
Look at the statistics, it's 11.
Is it?
11. Yeah.
About every 2 hours a breastfed baby would feed.
Mm.
We say a good feed is 8 or more times in the day. It should definitely not be feeding any less than 8. So if it's less than 8, there's something going a bit wrong. Mostly it will be 10 to 12. So every 2 hours or so. How long is a typical feed, Leanne?
40 minutes.
Can be 40. This is a multiple choice answer. You can have more than one.
So
20.
5 to
60.
60.
Yeah, 5 to 60.
60 minutes or 1 hour.
What the guidance says is as a good feed is anywhere between 5 and 40 minutes. So if it's lasting 60, I mean, it might sometimes do that, but majority, if it's lasting 60 every time, that baby needs reassessment because it's not being very effective in its milk transfer.
Okay.
If it's lasting 5 every time, is technically okay, but I would still be getting that baby checked out. Some babies are just really efficient, and I've had some babies that will only ever feed for 8 minutes for the entirety of their breastfeeding journey and are absolutely fine. So if it's at the lower end of 5, get it checked. If it's above 40, get it checked. If it's anything in between, you're good to go. What's more common? Feeding from both, one, or a variety of boobs? As in, it's not just one or the other, it's different each time.
I'd say both.
Any other advances? Babies often feed from both first, but a variety is usual. It's unusual to get a baby who will only do one or the other. So just like you might have a small breakfast and a big lunch one day, and a big breakfast and a small lunch the next day, babies do both.
What's the difference between both breasts and a variety of breasts?
Feeding from both boobs each time, always 1, 2, 1, 2. And the variety means sometimes just one and then goes to sleep. Sometimes 1, 2, then goes to sleep.
Okay.
Sometimes 1, 2, 3, then goes to sleep.
Yeah, okay.
When's the most milk made out of these times? 4 till 10 a.m, 4 a.m. till 4 p.m, 4 p.m. till 10 p.m, or 10 p.m. till 4 a.m.
Is it 10 p.m. to 4 a.m?
Yep, middle of the night. And when does supply peak? When is the most milk being made?
Isn't it from day 5 to up to 6 months? You said it.
Is it week 6? I want to guess.
Yeah, week 6 is when it hits its peak, and then it stabilizes for the rest of that journey to 6 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So more from day 5 to week 2, more from week 2 to week 6, stabilizes and stays the same until week, all the way till month 6 when they start weaning. And then the final slide, because common challenges I'm going to do on a video, is how to tell if feeding's going well. What comes in must go out. So you tell how well a feed's going by how many poops and wees they're having. And this is a table that I would not necessarily photograph off the screen here, but I would photograph it off the slides that I send you, and I would keep this with me at all times with clients. This is probably the most important thing you will learn around breastfeeding, is look at what's coming out. Because if it's less than what's on this chart, you need midwifery advice. So 8 or more feeds in 24 hours going in, and then coming out is day 1 to 2, 1 to 2 nappies a day, wet. Day 3 to 4, 3 to 4 nappies a day wet. Day 5 to 6, 5 or more nappies. And then from day 7 up onwards, the first month, we're looking at good 6 or more heavy nappies. If we're not having that amount of wet nappies, it means we're probably not getting enough milk in. And then poo, we want to change colour. And I showed you the colour change on the last session. Black to green to brown to yellow. And from day 6, 7 onwards, we're wanting at least 2 poos from a breastfed baby, quite yellow and watery. And for the first 6 weeks from a breastfed baby, baby should poop every day. Do not be fooled by people who say, oh no, it's fine, they haven't gone for a few days without. If it's a breastfed baby, they should be pooping. And if not, we need to go back to the midwife or the health visitor. So this is something, when I send you through the slides, I would strongly suggest that you photograph or screenshot. And I keep this on my phone. It's one of the things I'll refer to with clients the most frequently. And this comes from UNICEF, which is the baby-friendly guidelines for the UK. So it's the source that all midwives should be using. The other slides are about boobs and challenges. Oh. So lots of different boobs, lots of different challenges. And I'll be going through these on a video for you guys. And expressing and storing breast milk will be on that video. And that's why we're finishing now, because I knew I wouldn't get through all of that today. So we'll share that on a video and you can watch it sometime over this week. And then we've got Carmel's video, if you haven't watched that already, on breastfeeding. And we've got the Global Health Media How to Attach a Baby video. So there's going to be 2 videos up already and 1 more to watch. Okay, only 10 minutes over. I'm getting better. Any questions, or feel free to leave.